Hey guys, Adrienne here with Sheroes and Shenanigans. Yay! All right, I am back with tip number 9. 2 more tips until we are done with the 10 tips for clearing up toxic talk. Here we go. Finally named it. All right, so let's see. I meant to post this over the weekend, or at least create it over the weekend, and got busy doing what I'm about to suggest, which is cleaning up your integrity. All right, first off, integrity. My kids are upstairs. All right, integrity has to do with making sure things work correctly, right? Like if you have the integrity of a box and you sit on it, then it doesn't work the way it's supposed to work. So integrity is entirely up to you. You get to make it up. You get to decide what you're going to do and how you're going to act. And if you decide to keep those agreements, you're keeping your integrity. You're staying on top of it. You're staying within it. And you're making sure that things continue to work, especially you, the way that you've decided you want you to work. Here, by the way, is where people get stopped up with integrity and then why it gets put to the side. Because we have a hard time forgiving ourselves. Yikes, hard one. Not really. I mean, it is hard, I get it. But it's really just more about when you fall off the horse, get back on. It's not much more than that. A lot of times when we say we're going to do something and then we don't do it, then we forget or something happens and we don't do it, or we just choose not to do it. Then it becomes one of those things where now it starts to weigh on you. And once it starts to weigh on you, that's when it becomes harder to forgive yourself. So the thing is that with integrity and keeping it and your word basically is that if you find or remember that you didn't keep your word, you want to clean that up as soon as possible. So you either reschedule something or just say, yep, I'm human, I let that one go, and then get back on the horse and get the job done. So don't get stuck in, oh man, I didn't do that. Well, since I didn't do it, I'm just not going to do it. Get right back on, because it's all of that stuff that's actually what's weighing down and creating anxiety inside. All right. So as soon as you fall back off, make sure that you get back on. So, let's see. Let's just go back a little bit. I remember one of my big funny stories that I share with people a lot is the first time that I really got around to kind of really cleaning up my own integrity on my own. I had lived with my parents and I was kind of always the, messier child. And my mother was always pretty strict about making sure that we cleaned things up. So I grew up knowing how to do it. And then I ended up moving out. And when I finally moved into my own place that was just myself, it was kind of like rebel without a cause. Just decided, hey, it's my place. I don't have to do anything about it. And I do remember a good friend of mine, it was actually my boss at the time. He came to pick me up at my place because something was wrong with my car, and he walked into my house, and my house was like probably, it probably looked like it was knee deep in clothes everywhere and dishes everywhere and whatever. And I was like, hey, I was by myself, didn't really care. It was somewhere around the age of 21 or something. And I just remember him looking around before he took me to my job, and he just went, what is going on? What's going on with you? Are you okay? And I went, what? Yeah, totally fine. Like, no big deal. It's just a mess. I can clean it up. No biggie whatsoever. And he said, no, you're not getting it. He said, you need to understand that what's going on out here is what's going on up here. And he like knocked me in my forehead. And it kind of just went, oh my gosh, that is so going on up there. So now there will be things like in my life, this is kind of, there are times when it happens repeatedly. Like if I'm really focused on something, then something else, falls by the wayside, or I have kids at home all the time. So if I'm working on one room, then they're downstairs messing up the other room that I just finished. So of course there are things that are hard to stay on top of from time to time. However, it was where it just kind of clicked that, wow, this mess is showing up outside of this goal. So that was kind of my first aha with it. Like I said, my mom had always been, make sure you clean, things like that. So I knew how to do it. It just, my mom wasn't there to tell me, and I didn't feel like it anymore. And that was the first time when I kind of looked at it and went, oh, I'm doing it for me. I'm not doing it for her anymore. I'm not doing it for anybody anymore. I'm doing it because my life works when I do it. So this weekend, my husband and I were out in the garage cleaning up our integrity. It's wintertime. The Christmas stuff was still all over the place because it was cold out, and I did not want to go out there and do anything with it. So we finally got around to doing a lot of that stuff this weekend. So that's where we are, and that is tip number 9, cleaning up your integrity. I'm about to actually get off this phone and go clean up some of the inside of the house, because while we were cleaning up the garage, the kids were making a mess elsewhere. So how do we do this? Tips. All right. Well, I had another friend. She is my second mother that I call her, and she's my mom's best friend. And I remember when I was trying to actually clean up my integrity, and I called her and I was talking to her about, a mess and whatever. And she said, Adrienne, why don't you set a timer and try to beat the clock? And that was amazing to me because, before it had always felt like I was doing it for somebody else. And it was always one of those things where, it just lagged and I didn't want to. And so she just said, set a clock and try to beat it. And that was, really when I started actually doing things to compete with myself versus compete with other people. And it was around that same age of 21. And from there, it was always one of my tools that was like, I really don't want to get this done, but I'm going to set a clock and do it. So another thing that I use are lists. Being part of, the digital age now, it's one of those things where a lot of times we create lists on our phone, but we don't always necessarily go back to it. So I personally still use paper lists because it was what I grew up with, and it just kind of feels natural, and it's something I can kind of carry around with me. It's motivational versus distracting like a phone is. So I create a paper list, and it depends on, usually I write down all of the different things that I know I need to do, and then I kind of evaluate it. And I go one of two ways, and it just depends on the day. I either start at the easiest thing to get done and then go to the hardest, or else I start with the hardest and go to the easiest. Now, how I decide this is by actually looking and reviewing it. If there is something that I know is going to be hard, but I'm very excited about doing it, then usually that is something that kind of I put at the end of my list because it's my reward. So then I'll, cross off some of the other things that are a little bit easier, and then it's kind of like, okay, that's my reward, is doing that. Another way that I'll attack it from time to time is I'll decide to put the thing that is going to take the most amount of time at the beginning or at the end. It just really depends. Like I said, another way is where if it's really hard or if I know it's going to take up a lot of time, then what I'll do is I'll actually start tackling the easier or shortest times first. Or if it's a hard thing that's going to take time and I know I'm avoiding it, like paying bills, so something like that, then once I get my list done, then I usually tackle that first because it's the thing I really don't want to do. And if I get that done, then I know I'll feel better, and then I'll kind of feel like tackling the other things. So, but creating a list is always very helpful for me because every time I cross something off of it or put a check mark by it, it's like, yes, got that done. And anytime that you're cleaning up integrity, you feel so much better about your life because it starts working again. Other ways to clean up integrity would be, are you saying what you need to say? You know, is there somebody that you're not having a conversation with or that you're avoiding having a conversation with? Because I promise you that once you actually have that conversation, hard as it might be, you'll feel better afterward. Are you maybe not forgiving or not apologizing? I promise after those two things that you will feel much better after you clean those up too. Remember that forgiveness is for you. You're not then walking around with all that anger, angst, anxiety, all of that gross stuff going on inside. So there is my little tidbit on cleaning up your integrity and some quick little tips on how to get it done faster or maybe the ways that you'd like to approach it. All right, stick around for tip 10, which is the last tip in this little sequence here. And then after that, we'll start talking about some cool other things. So I should be coming to you with tip 10, I believe, on Wednesday. Sorry I didn't get to you this weekend, and I will definitely have some shenanigans for you this week. Have a really good Monday. Bye.